And it says we are live. So welcome everybody. I am Sandhills shooter, and please ignore the collar on my neck. I had some surgery earlier in the week, and everything's healing up well. But the doctor says I'm stuck in this thing for a while, so don't worry about that. But I just want to welcome everybody. A special live broadcast that we're doing tonight. We do have a very special guest with us. We have Todd Watson. He is running on the Republican ticket for the U.S. Senate seat here in Nebraska. And we wanted to give Todd a chance to come on and introduce himself to as many people in the state as we can get him to, and also a chance for people to ask questions in real time. None of these questions that Todd is getting tonight, he's not prepared for any of these. He doesn't know what's coming. So we're going to get, his honest, real answers without cherry picking or him telling us what we can ask. So that's kind of what the format's going to be tonight. And I guess one other thing I would mention is here at Sandhills Shooter channel, we're not endorsing any one candidate. I would be equal opportunity to anybody that wants to come on and do a live Q&A session as well. But Todd is the only one that I have been able to reach out to so far. So welcome, Todd. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, hello, fans. I'm Todd Watson, running for U.S. Senate here in Nebraska. I'm sure you'll want to endorse when I'm done, by the way. Just kidding. That neck thing, hey, that's cool. No, I'm running. I'm a constitutionalist in the Republican Party. I've long been an advocate for the Constitution. I was put on the ballot in 2014, not with the party, because I spoke to the Constitution around the state of Nebraska, and I was a volunteer petition, so I'm really proud of that, with signatures coming from 89 out of the 93 counties. But people know me as a strict constitutionalist. I'm an originalist. And my platform, everyone asks, what are you going to do for us? Well, mainly what I'm going to do is just do what's in the Constitution, restore it, and we'll make government just great again in those limited areas that we're given, and get the heck out of the way on a lot of other stuff and try to restore liberty, because people make the country great, not government. And so that's, you hear that all the time, and everyone's asking, are you the next politician that's just saying this and blah, blah, blah. You know, I've kept my money clean. I'm as transparent as a candidate you'll ever find. I do videos like this all the time with a variety of different people. I do cold turkey shoots on whatever question you want. We got nothing to hide. I'm just like you. Everyone's an extraordinary average Joe is what I call them. I'm just another one of them. And but it's time that we represent the people again, and not the donor class. And we believe the Constitution is the best way to move this country forward for the most amount of people.
Okay, good. And that's definitely something that we're going to be discussing here before the night's over, is some of the attacks on our Constitution going on right now. Real quick, let me introduce a few other people that we have on the panel. First and foremost, it looks like I am here twice, and that's just because Mrs. Sandhills wanted to be part of the chat. She doesn't actually want to partake and actually chat. She just wants to be included. So that other one is Mrs. Sandhills. Travis P11, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Appreciate the invite. Thank you so much, and it's good to be here, and I'm looking forward to this. Thanks.
All right, cool. And then also we have Garrett Croct from the Omaha area, and he's been a huge proponent as far as advancing the pro Second Amendment agenda, not just in his area but across the state. Garrett, are you with us? I saw that you turned off the camera, and it looks like you're still muted. You might have to unmute. He may not be with us yet, so we'll go on. When Garrett comes, we'll go ahead and let him talk a little bit too. There you are. Looks like the camera's on now. How about just click that other side where the mute button is? I had to quiet you down when you were driving earlier, so. Maybe. We can see you, Garrett. We just can't hear you. on your phone screen there. If you tap up above our little pictures, you'll get to where you can turn your camera on and off on one side, and then on the other side. There you go.
There we go. My fingers are too fat to hit the dang thing.
All right, welcome.
Yeah, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
All right, how you doing, Todd?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah. Well, we had a really good like an overpass event today. Set up a bunch of flags, and we got a bunch of signs out, and I don't know, we probably reached a few thousand people, so that was pretty cool.
Good.
And yeah, everybody's pretty happy to see all the flags up and show of patriotic support. You know, it was pretty cool.
Let's just get them to vote for what the flag stands for and defending the Constitution. So.
Yep, I agree.
All right. So, okay, we've all got a few questions that we want to get to. I know, Todd, I know your time is valuable, so we won't take up too much of it tonight. But, of course, you had mentioned you're a constitutionalist, and we all see a lot of different attacks going on lately, not just on our Second Amendment. Now, Travis and I both run predominantly gun chats or pro-gun channels on YouTube here. So that's going to be, of course, what we're going to want to talk about first and foremost. I've got a few other things on my plate here too. But just as far as Second Amendment in general, where do you stand, sir?
Just as the amendment reads, I mean, we're here to, protect the right to bear arms, shall not be infringed. We were proud to be at the keynote speaker at the Second Amendment rally. Most people didn't show up. They're too soft. It was cold out. But the dedicated people for liberty showed up and to defend that Second Amendment. But we have to recover that meeting. Some of my fears in the conservative angles is the uneducated always talk about guns. But it does say arms. And we need to know the full extent of what arms represents. And it's important.
Awesome. Awesome. So I guess the first question that I would have then would be, there's a lot of talk lately about, repealing the, as far as some people are calling for a full out repeal of that amendment and completely take it away. We don't want to see that happen, Todd, but if it came down to, we had to give something to get something, what concessions are you willing to make? What compromises would you make in order to hold on to our Second Amendment rights?
Well, I'm not really into concessions. I've long-standing track record. If you're violating the Constitution, I'm going to battle you. If you're, if we're within the walls of the Constitution, we'll move in the general conservative direction and make deals. So I'm not into concessions because that's not how the Constitution works. We've lost that mindset in America. It's the rules we put on the government before the government puts rules on us. And so I'm not into compromise of the Constitution or making a deal on that. If an amendment is on the table, obviously I'm going to vote against that. But that's the only time where any type of anything could potentially be valid would be an amendment, because any other law is just a waste of time. It's a violation.
Okay, alrighty. I like that answer, by the way. I definitely would never be able to get behind somebody who's willing to make any concessions or compromises at all. I've seen that happen too much with people that say that they're pro Second Amendment and then they keep trading away my rights, and I'm not liking that very much personally. So I'm just kind of go around the horn. We'll take some turns here as far as these questions go. So, Travis, what would you like to ask Todd?
Just kind of, what are your thoughts in general with, me being a public school teacher, and I know you've got a teacher in the family. Your mother is a teacher. Was a teacher.
Teacher. Yep.
Okay. This is an issue that keeps coming up all over the place. What are your thoughts on carry in the classroom? People that are licensed concealed carriers being allowed to carry in the classroom. I'm seeing states are passing it. I think Ohio just passed it. There's been a few states that have had it for quite a while. And I'm not talking about outfitting every single teacher, just the ones that would volunteer to do it or would be qualified to do it. What are your thoughts about that in general?
Yeah, I haven't really changed my tune from the start. When that issue got really hot, I think we were first out in Scotts Bluff, and and we haven't changed from there. I mean, a lot of these decisions belong to the school board level. I mean, I think school board may be one of the most, if not important, jobs in the country right now. And I think these should be platform items for the school and how they want to deal with these issues. So we believe in local control, and you got to follow through on that. So school boards, in conjunction with principals, superintendents, teachers, is probably a good idea. My only concern is, look, I'm interested in natural law, and the right to self-defense is so important. That's very foundational to human existence. So, those type of concerns need to be observed. But as far as the actual policy for each district, I'm trying to get the federal government out of education to branch.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
And so
we appreciate that. Thank you.
With that said, you got to trust your boards and principals.
Yep.
Frankly, there may be a lot of different solutions, and we'll find the best one over time.
Cool. It's good to hear. Thank you.
All right, Garrett, what question would you have?
What do you feel about national constitutional carry?
Yeah, I mean, good question. This is one of the things, you don't mean political, I'm just going to tell you the facts, is for the McConnell leadership team in the Senate, they promised reciprocity with fixed NICS, and it never happened. So reciprocity got scratched, and fixed NICS came through, which the reason they introduced the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act was the NICS database. And so I was pretty fired up. I'm not with McConnell. I'm with the Freedom Caucus that, they lied. They said reciprocity would come into play with fixed NICS. That did not happen. In addition, they should have brought the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act with that to cure what the fixed NICS bill did. They didn't do that. So at the end of the day, you're ending up with a gun control bill. Yep. That's one way of saying, hey, I'm for reciprocity across state lines, and that should have been done.
I agree. That's uncalled for. We have natural rights, and they need to be we need to be able to exercise them. And obviously the people in right now don't believe that. So it's nice having a candidate that actually, is for that. I'll go on to. I'm sorry.
For freedom, you'll find me for freedom. But going back to a couple of questions ago, though, since you're the gun rights crowd, I mean, one of the things we've got to get the Second Amendment people on board with is defending these other amendments. I mean, the noise is so loud for Second Amendment protection, but then when they go ahead and take a straight up vote in your face to get rid of the Fourth Amendment, it's like, who cares? And I'm like, if we don't understand defending the Fourth Amendment is going to endanger the Second Amendment, then we got to get past elementary Constitution. We have got to defend them all.
Yeah, we're starting a March for Our Rights. It'll be, I believe, in May. And it's for every, it's for every right in the Constitution. And we're trying to find speakers for, just with the diverse opinions and different things. But we're gonna have a big old show of force kind of going for every single constitutional right.
Yeah,
so I think people need to do a lot more of that. I agree.
I had a TV interview this week where the guy was like, well, I like the Fourth. I agree with your Fourth. I don't know about the Second. And I go, that's not how law works. It's not pick and choose time. I mean, there's stuff in the Constitution I don't like. I think the 16th and 17th should be repealed, but I've made an oath to uphold it. And until we get those changed, I mean, I'll uphold it even though I hate it. Go ahead. Sorry.
All right. Hey, Garrett, would you do us a favor in between comments? Would you go ahead and click that mute back on? That way I don't mute you and you didn't know about it. We're getting a little, there we go, getting a little background noise out the car window there. All right. So one other question that I would ask, and I know this one is straying away from the Second Amendment topic here, Todd, but this is an issue that's very personal to me, and I know when I'm stepping into that voting booth, just speaking from personal experience, we can talk about things like budget. We can talk about things like healthcare. And to be quite honest, I'm not smart enough about certain topics to know what's going to work, what's not, and who's saying the things that I want to hear. But as far as voting my conscience, of course, Second Amendment is going to be right up there, and protecting freedom of any of the amendments, or the amendments that protect any of my freedoms, I guess I should say, definitely right up there. But another very personal topic to me is the abortion issue. So where do you stand on the abortion issue?
Yeah, so I'm as pro-life as it gets. I mean, it's a big difference between my opponent and I. She's funded Planned Parenthood 4 times in the budget. I've made a vow to vote no on budgets that fund Planned Parenthood. And I've been called extreme on that. And I think a lot of people talk about a religious view on that. And frankly, it's a 5th and 14th Amendment. So it's very clear the government cannot deprive life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And there's no question in anyone's mind that Planned Parenthood denies life. And so the government cannot be a part of depriving life, period. So funding Planned Parenthood just is a no-go. It's a constitutional violation from my vantage point, and I'm going to vote no on that budget. So that's the lion's share to saving lives, is get the Americans' conscience and off that type of business and even having any money tied to it whatsoever. So.
Now, again, I mean, I've got a video on my channel that talks about this, and I know that I don't have all the answers, and I'm not going to get on a soapbox here and preach about, if abortion's ever going to be okay in any circumstance. That's not for a discussion tonight. But yeah, I mean, I could have been just as easily aborted as put up for adoption when I was born, and of course, I thank God that my birth mother made the choice that she did, instead of having me killed before I even had a chance to live my life. So yeah, I definitely appreciate your feelings there. And as far as any of my tax money going to fund an organization who, I don't care what percentage of the money goes to abortions, if it's not 0%, I'm not okay with that personally. So
I agree with you.
All right, Travis, what would you say next?
Well, you know what we do. I'm kind of keeping an eye on the chat out there, and we do have a question. This is kind of an interesting one from Richard Chamberlain out there in the chat on the YouTube side. I thought maybe I'd just throw that one out there. I've got a few questions lined up. Can we get Trump to do an executive order to stop attacks on the Constitution? I mean, what are we supposed to do to try to prevent these attacks on our liberties and freedom that we're seeing today? I mean, what can your average citizen do? I mean, a lot of us, especially us that might be more on the conservative side, we're the ones that get blamed for everything. We're the ones that cause all the problems, in the media. What are we supposed to do? Where do we begin?
Well, I'll turn off the mainstream media. I mean, it's what I do. I mean, I have to pay attention somewhat just to.
Yeah.
We got populations operating on 2 different subsets of information, which is really messed up out there. So I can usually tell what angle people are coming at me based on what they viewed, what they don't view. And so you have 2 different worldviews at the same time, but that's a story for a different day. Look, I mean, a big thing I've got to do is we've got to get up there, and if you're violating the Constitution, and the best way to go about this, if the Supreme Court has already interpreted that law, that constitutional law, and made it crystal clear what that right means, and that's going to be violated, then we need to come down hard on law and statutes, and there needs to be repercussions for violating the law. And frankly, people are violating the Constitution left and right up there, and no one's doing anything about it. I mean, you got Clapper and perjury. Just let him go. You lied under oath, whatever. Until someone goes to jail for breaking the law of significance in the political world, they're just going to keep running all over this document. So, in the meantime, we got to get people more involved in teaching at schools. I mean, I taught a few classes here during this campaign. I enjoyed it. You're a teacher. We got to teach the Constitution to these kids. I feel bad for these kids. They get labeled as, they're freaks and they don't like America and they're socialists. And what I've found is they've just been starved of good information. And when they're presented good information, they soak it up.
Yeah.
And so we can complain about it, or we can say, you know what, we're going to get involved and help teach the next generation, which is kind of my approach. And I think that's the teacher in me from my mom's side. So I enjoy working with the kids on the Constitution and not giving up on them. So I think that's important. But establishing justice is the first role listed in the preamble of the Constitution. We need some justice up in D.C. against these cats that are violating it, especially on the clear interpreted laws.
Yeah. No, and that's, it's interesting. You're talking about the kids and the students and the information that they get. And the thing is, these kids are getting ripped left and right. They're being called lazy millennials. There's parodies of millennials. You're seeing stuff on YouTube. I don't know if anybody understands this. Us older people, they're the product of the environment we've created for them.
Yep.
They're enjoying every benefit we've reaped for them. They're enjoying the technology. They're enjoying the instant gratification. So if we want to change them, we've got to do something about it. And I'm just saying that as a teacher. I mean, you got to step up and, like you said, teach the Constitution in school, teach history in school. These kids are, and they are, unfortunately, they're getting force fed that different view from social media, from mainstream news, from television, and it's not helping the cause. I can just say that right now. So, we can sit there and rip on these kids, or we can maybe do something about it as parents, as family members, as friends.
I agree.
Yeah.
I didn't answer Richard's question. I don't dodge them.
Oh,
Look,
the attacks. Executive order stop attacks on the Constitution.
I think most of us are agreement. Like, we have got to get legislative laws back into place. I mean, what's the point of a legislative branch if it doesn't matter anymore? And
yeah,
Article 1, Section 1. I mean, the very first thing, it's really clear. It says all legislative laws are vested in the legislative branch, or all laws are vested in the legislative branch. And these executive agencies have run amok. And my fear is, look, I'm pretty much in Trump's camp. I think he's pretty good. Does that give him a blank slate on everything? No, but I like what he's trying to do. But at the same time, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, tariffs given to Congress, regulating foreign commerce, Congress. So, if we're not willing to uphold that document, then it's not because, you're against Trump. I just think, God, imagine if Obama set taxation levels in unilaterally. I mean, we'd be dead right now. I mean, he would have taxed us to 200% to build windmills in every block, Yeah. So tax it. You got to imagine, do you want a progressive with that power if that office changes over? And my concern is I don't want any taxation policy created by executive branch or order, because that will come around and bite us later.
And we're talking about taxation. I know you've got some roots in the realty industry, the business industry. Your family you have your own businesses. Myself as a YouTuber, somebody who actually makes a little bit of money off what I do on the channel and AdSense revenue, I would love to take this bigger. Sorry, my cat's joining us. I would like to take this to the next level and expand and do more. But it's the taxing and what I'm going to have to pay to get my business set up in the LLC. That scares me. I'm already looking at how much I got slammed on taxes this year from the little bit that I actually made from YouTube revenue. I mean, I'd love to go do more merchandising and expand and maybe get an online store going. But that is just daunting. And what are your views on just taxation in general? Is there a fair level? Is there any fair level? What, strictly just the state level? What do you think? Because I'd love to do more, but I don't want to, because I'm worried I'm going to get nailed, Yeah,
that's why I want to repeal the 16th Amendment. I mean, I always say sorry, Garrett, cigarette taxes have curbed smoking. So what do you think working taxes do? Curbs working. So, I mean, this is moronic. So, and then I think, over the long term, now look, everyone goes, oh, this is so extreme. And I get it. It sounds extreme, but I think it's possible in my lifetime. But look, I think if we go to a consumption tax, some type of derivative of this and get out of the income tax is the way to go, because it frees up people to work. Don't worry about compliance to make a living. Just go make a living. You'll pay for it when you buy something, and it's going to scoop up all the illegal activity out there in consumption. Main Street is getting hammered right now in Nebraska because everything's moving online. And
yeah.
So it level out the playing field between online and Main Street, Nebraska. So, and then it gets rid of, equality before the law is a tenet of justice. And that's the first thing break when they go up to DC. Well, it was Trump's complaint in the tax reform bill. It would have been even better if they had equality before the law, but the Senate, why I need to go up there, and McConnell and the K Street gang threw in all the loopholes for investment bankers and loopholes for oil and gas. And people are sick of this. Look, no one cares what everyone else does to make a living. I don't care if you're a teacher, you're an electrician, or you're a real estate guy. I mean, for the love, we got to be playing by the same set of rules. A buck's a buck, you know, and that's what people want.
Yep. Thank you. Good to know. John, real quick, I just want to tell you that you do have your own channel on gunchannels.com now. I don't know if you saw that in the side chat.
I did see that. Thank you.
Cool. So maybe your show's over there. So yeah, you got your channel up and running.
Yeah,
now.
G,
Cool.
I didn't go over there and check it out. If you haven't gone ahead and taken the liberty to post this on my channel, please do so for me, and I will thank you later for that. But again, thank you right now, G Webs, for doing that. Okay, so next up would be Garrett again. What's your next question? We'll give you a second to find the mute button there. There you go.
All right. I had one person ask, do you think abolishing gun-free zones would be anything that would be in the public's favor? They seem to be a kind of a magnet for, mass shooters and whatnot. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I did this in another video. My wife and I lived in Chicago for 2 years, and we saw firsthand. I mean, the joke around there, and I think it's spread, is it's Chirac, and it's a gun-free zone. It's a disaster. So, you know, people always think I'm placating to, oh, the NRA, or I want this group. I go, no, I shoot it straight from the hip. What's good for the people? And South Side Chicago is a disaster, and it's a gun-free zone. You study the murder rates, and they're usually highest in gun-free zones. So plus it violates the right to self-defense. So, you know, the real conversation we need to be having, no one's denying there's bad killings going on. It's wrong. It makes me sick to my stomach too. But the conversations need to be on evil. There's evil in the world. We got mental health issues. Let's talk about that. I think it's pretty impossible to argue. Look at troubled kids. It's usually us males, to be honest about it. And the statistics coming from broken homes is pretty high. And so the Constitution calls for domestic tranquility. Domestic is Latin for home. And we've got to talk about, you know, stable homes for kids, especially boys, again. And we have to have a conversation as fathers in leading this topic back. Primarily, it's our problem.
Now, while we're on the subject of family, what are some things that you think that could help and that are destroying the family unit as a whole? You know, there's quite a few laws that you know, that kind of hinder and discourage you know, people staying together as a family. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I have a few thoughts on there. And just to be clear, I mean, broken homes has affected our family too. So a lot of people go, oh, here comes a married guy preaching. So I don't want to come off like that. I mean, broken homes has affected my direct household. So don't feel like I'm judging. I'm just going with stats. But things we can do, like welfare policies, are really designed against keeping people together. And so we got to look at welfare policies that honor the family unit. But after that, it's like I'm mostly get the government out of the family.
Yep.
So I've always said too much government too much government in the church is, you know, we get theocracy. Too much government business is socialism. Too much government and moralities, statism. Too much government and family is the nanny state. So the common denominator is too much government into all this stuff. So we need to pull the government out. I think too many conservatives are looking for the government to affirm what they believe in, and the reality is we need to get the government out of that and look to the family to provide leadership. So I see my role, if those things win, or if I win, is to really be a figurehead, just a citizen with the title, showing myself up at all these family-oriented events, church event, whatever, just to say we need to honor the family, and as a public leader in the public eye, push these nonprofit and these good activities that strengthen the family out front. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely great.
Well, and it's really hard to argue with stats. I mean, whether you believe in people should be married or whatever, that's one thing, but the fact is that most of the problems that we have as far as the public shootings, things like that, the subject does come from a broken home or some sort of home where it's not what I would call ideal. I grew up in a home with both parents, and up until my mom passed away, my parents were married for over 40 years to each other, and I had a lot of friends who didn't have that going on, and I can't any mistakes I've ever made, I can't blame it on my upbringing. I had great parents, but you know what? I've never had the desire to grab a gun and go shoot somebody up either. I was taught better than that. So whether you have one parent or two in the house, I think a lot of responsibility that should fall on the shoulders of parents these days isn't getting placed. The responsibility isn't getting placed where it belongs, nor is it being taken like it should be. So yeah, definitely. We do have a fellow Nebraskan in the chat here on YouTube watching. He is from, looks like rural Box Butte County, just west of Alliance. And here a little bit earlier in the chat, he had made a comment here. We need to stop doping these kids up and make parents parent again. And he's pretty sure there are harmful side effects to the meds for ADD, ADHD, things like that. He's pointing fingers at Big Pharma. What do you have to say about things like that?
You're going to love me because I'm probably the first Republican that hasn't bowed down to Big Pharma. I call them out. I've been calling them out for years. So Big Pharma is let's say you do like Big Pharma. The fact is they rig prices in Medicare. There's no negotiation. They set them. I mean, that's about as communistic as it gets. I think Ben Swan did a piece on he's a good journalist, independent journalist, on the ties of some of these type of drugs to these different events that have happened around. And I think there's some merit there because the drugs seem to be showing up in the same cases. So in science, we'd call that looks like there's some relationship there between the variables that need to be explored. So I don't have any Big Pharma money. I'm going back to the Constitution. I'm a big fan of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8. If I misquoted that, you can light me up later. But those are the patents. Congress does have the power to set patents. And I think it's time for patent review, especially on reformulation. I mean, a lot of the drugs that are good and needed need to be reviewed and their patent levels brought down. I mean, insulin being protected for 90 years, this is insane. Okay. And we can get competitive costs in our drugs again, because if there's anything that's frustrated me, sorry, I'm going on a tangent, is look, I was in 14 saying I got a plan, and my opponent at that time said a bad plan beats no plan every single time. And what happened? They had no plan. I mean, it's unacceptable, and it's because they're beholden to the lobbyists. So we got to bring free markets into play. That sounds like a tagline, but that means transparent prices. That means no more monopoly for Big Pharma. It means we're going to negotiate prices on drugs. And they call themselves free traders in the establishment. They're not. They have protectionist trade around the world for drugs. So we need to open up free trade for drugs to make sure that we get the lowest price possible for anyone with a medical condition. So hopefully you get a sense I'm not with just look at my money. You'll know I'm not Big Pharma.
Awesome. All right, thank you. And yeah, don't be afraid on this chat. And if you're ever a guest again, don't be afraid to go on a rant or follow a thought that you have. As much as I want you to be able to answer the questions that are coming in, I also want to get to know Todd Watson, the man, and I think that the rest of the people watching do right now too. And so, especially those of us that are from Nebraska, and if elected, you're going to be representing us in Washington. So I appreciate the fact that that you're here. I appreciate the fact that you're approachable. Like you said, just a regular guy. That's what all of us here that are watching you right now. We're all just regular people, whether we're men or women. And so that's something that we all really appreciate, being part of the chat here. So that's very cool. Don't be afraid to go on a rant and tell us how you really feel.
Well, I mean, my big thing is we have some toxic attitudes though in the public. Like some people just yell at me because I'm running for office. They don't know what I stand for. They haven't studied my positions. They've never talked to me. And so they automatically think I'm guilty because all politicians stink, right? And I wouldn't treat you that way. Don't treat me that way. I didn't make your mess, okay? I'm just trying to help you fix it. And some of the danger of having these normal conversations, though, is look, these establishment people, they go put these Hollywood prezos on your TV with all these huge budgets behind them and all these complex studies on what people want to hear because you'll vote for that. It's all a bunch of lies. But don't mistake being transparent and real like this as a lack of knowledge on the Constitution. I'll bring it. And I'll hang better with those than those guys can up there. And I've got an accomplished business background, and I think that matters up there when our delegation no one came from business. And we fell to 50th in the union for economic growth. Look, we need someone that knows what the heck they're doing at the companies. They need to understand someone that's actually cut a budget, balanced a budget, and employed 100 people. That matters. It's livelihoods. And I don't think they have livelihood mindsets up there, and I do. So anyways, I think everyone likes the fact that I'm real, but sometimes don't mistake that for not. Look, we'll bring it. That's all I'll say. We'll bring it. And we'll hang with those guys. So
you're saying when it matters, you've got the teeth?
I got more than teeth. I'll leave it.
All right, good enough. All right, one more question I would ask. This would not only apply to not necessarily to just senators, but anyone in Congress. And honestly, my question is not just for Washington, but also at state level. But what are your thoughts on term limits?
I'm for it, and I don't think it'll happen via Congress. So I think they're so entrenched with so much money that they'll never pass it on themselves. So will I vote for it? Yes, absolutely. Will it pass? I don't think so. I think, that's where the Convention of States has risen up because everyone sees it needs to be from an outside force. And I agree with that assessment because I don't think it's going to happen from within. But I'm happy to introduce. I heard, and don't hold me to this, I'm pretty sure it's accurate. I heard Senator Sass had brought up term limits and McConnell just went off on him and it got buried. But I mean, I know McConnell can't stand term limits. That's why we got to get Senator Fisher out. It's that whole McConnell team is a disaster, just bad, and they don't want term limits.
Well, I find it curious that we can't have the president in office for more than 8 years, but yet we can have people in Congress for longer than I've been breathing air. So yeah, I just find it interesting, and I think that knowing that your time is limited, personally, I think that means that you're going to spend your time more wisely, and you're not going to spend all your time just trying to retain office. I think that you should try to get reelected as many times as you can, but the way that that's going to work is if you get the votes from your constituents, and so yeah, I'm on the same page there too.
My plan is to play like I don't have a second term. And we're just going to get after it, and we'll let the chips fall where they may. I mean, God has big plans. He can use me in a lot of different places. If I'm there, great. If I'm not, I'm not. Mm-hmm. We'll make ourselves useful wherever we can.
Excellent. Okay, Stephen Kaiser from the Alliance area would like to know how you feel about the Hearing Protection Act. Being a hunter, he would appreciate something like that being passed. So I've got a follow-up to that, but let's hear your talk on the Hearing Protection Act first.
I have to go study that one. I mean, I'd be happy to review it and respond. I haven't read up on that one.
And I can't name all the specifics. In a nutshell, it would remove suppressors or silencers, whatever you prefer to call them. It would remove them from the National Firearms Act and make them not an NFA item. So you wouldn't have to get the tax stamp to acquire one. You could just pick them up at any gun store, just like you can extra magazines or a telescoping stock or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, well, just hearing that, I mean, look, as we started this whole telecast, you can't ban arms. It's an arm. Instead of always talking gun, it's an arms. So it's a Second Amendment violation. So, of course, get it out.
Exactly. And then,
hey, by the way, you've had 2 questions from Alliance. Mm-hmm. Can we just talk about the Constitution calls to ratify treaties? And they should study the Paris Accord. The Paris Accord was never ratified by the Senate, a constitutional violation. And if anyone knows what the Paris Accord was, it was regulating carbon. So if you want to see your town alliance survive, you should go with the new senator that will say no to treaties that ban carbon, because if they ban carbon, alliance is toast. Just a subcategory for you.
Cool. I'm not familiar with what's going on with that, so I'm sure Stephen is. My next question would be the follow up on the Hearing Protection Act. The NFA in general, and I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to give you the chance to answer the question anyway. I would like to see the NFA completely repealed. I don't think that there's a need for the National Firearms Act from, what was it, 1934. But that's the original law that outlawed suppressors and automatic weapons and all that kind of stuff. And of course, it didn't actually outlaw it. It just made it to where you had to be rich in order to afford it. So it's not even really a ban. It's just at this point, it's an inconvenience. But again, where would you stand if someone approached you about a bill that would just completely take the NFA off the books?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great. I mean, again, banning arms, unconstitutional. Very simple.
Okay. And you're not worried. You're not worried about it. Nebraska would turn into the Old West again. Things like that. I mean, we've all heard, everybody who's listening to us right now, we've all heard all these arguments, and we all pretty much scoff when we hear it. But again, that's something that people are afraid of. If we just completely ban these things and we ban background checks, then we do know that there are going to be bad people that get these guns.
I just go back. I wrote a post in March, and I forget the numbers, but I mean, the ratio is just totally crazy. It's like 174,000 kids have been aborted. We've lost, gun deaths have been, 1,000. So if we're really serious about saving life and saving, go ban abortions, and then I'll take you seriously, like you actually care about preserving human life, and maybe then I'll listen to your discussion. But if you're going to tell me that we're going to keep abortion legal and 174,000 people are going to keep dying, but then we need to get serious about saving lives with a few hundred, that you don't know how to count, and maybe you're setting the budgets in DC. So you show me some consistency in valuing human life, and then we'll have a conversation.
That's an argument I always make. And usually I'm yelling at the TV or I'm yelling at the computer screen when I'm listening to someone else's chat and I'm not part of it. But when people talk about, the way that we need to save our children and save these babies is to ban guns, just to me seems like that's putting a Band-Aid on an amputation. It's only going to stop just a tiny bit of the problem here. And I'm with you. If we want to talk about banning abortions, or we want to talk about teenage drinking and driving, which in Nebraska is a huge problem. Yep. If we want to have common sense laws, then let's make it to where you're not allowed to drive a car until you're 21 or 25 or something like that. And there's a lot of things that if we want to go to extremes, and what I would say is if we want to get dumb about it, why stop at guns? And again, we could go down a whole different rabbit hole there, and that's not my intent tonight while I have you here. But
well, let's go down one rabbit hole, because I get this a lot, and I think we forget. In this country, there is due process, and you do lose rights if you commit a crime. Okay, so if you go drinking and driving and you get citation, guess what? It's pretty hard to drive again. You're going to have breathalyzers that you got to breathe into before you start the car. There is repercussions for breaking the laws. So, you know, if you break a law or you're a violent criminal, then okay, maybe we need to talk. Maybe because obviously you lose rights when you commit a crime and you go through due process and convicted in a court of law. So a loss of right is fundamentally what happens. So we can talk about issues on losing certain rights if you're convicted in a court of law with a jury of your peers on what are some of those repercussions. I can respect those arguments.
Sure, and I'm okay with anything from the result of due process.
Correct.
And again, I don't see how if we've got a problem with people not obeying laws, I don't see how we're going to make them follow the laws by adding more laws. I mean, by definition, criminals break the law, so I can't see where that's going to work.
Talking too much common sense.
Oh, sorry. I've
way too much common sense.
That's why I'm not a politician.
How dare you go with logic?
Okay, Travis, any other questions that you have for Todd while we have him?
Well, we have another. Actually, I have two. The first one is we have another question out here on the YouTube side. It says,
"Where are they from?
Will Deb Fisher debate you, Alan Kaiser? Is Alan the other guy from? He's the guy from Alliance, right? We got two Kaisers in here. We got two brothers going on, or what?
Steven's from Alliance. Alan, are you related to Steven at all?
I don't know. We might have a couple siblings here.
We'll give him time to go ahead and add to the chat there while Todd answers that question. Will Deb Fisher debate you?
A lot of people won't debate me because they can't hang.
That's awesome.
I hope she does debate me, but I'm not. You know who I really feel bad? I'll try to keep this family friendly. Do you know how many people have stepped up around the state? They've organized the facilities. They've done the moderating. They'll do the supplies, pay for the promotion. There is a lot of other people that have done work, and we can't even get a straight answer to them to not waste their time of yes or no. I mean, I don't know how you grew up, but my mom, she would host house parties and ask for RSVPs. And my mom she would get so mad if she bought food for 12 people and they didn't show up, or they didn't RSVP, or they RSVP'd and didn't show. I mean, it's a waste of people's time and it's inconsiderate. So step up and answer like, no, we're not going to debate, or yes, we will debate. I think she should. I mean, what are we losing our democracy? Is this just about oligarchy control now? I'd step up and debate, but at the end of the day, it's rude. It's just rude to all the people that have offered so much to put these debates together.
Well, and again, I mean, I have my own feelings. You know, anybody who refuses to debate, I mean, it doesn't look good in my eyes. You know, that to me seems like the opposite of transparency. Now, if you have legitimate issues and you want to answer the request to a debate and say, hey, I've got this going on, I legitimately cannot attend, that'd be one thing. But if somebody just says no, or I'm not going to debate you or whatever, yeah, that to me, I don't care who it is. I'm not a fan of that. I think that debates give us, as voters, I think they give us a lot of opportunity to find out who our candidates really are. I don't feel like I'm making a good decision if I'm not making an informed decision, and I can't imagine very many decisions I'm going to make that are more important than the decisions I'm going to make on May 15th this year. Here in Nebraska, that's the date of our primary election. So I'm going to mention this again at the end, but those of you that are Nebraskans, May 15th, if you haven't registered to vote, I think you have, one more day to get that done to vote in this year's primary election. Make sure that you get out and cast that vote, get counted, show up, and go into that ballot box or that voting booth, because if we're not willing to go out and cast our vote, then you really are a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you say it doesn't matter, my vote doesn't matter anyway. Well, sure, it's not going to matter at all if you don't cast it. So that's what I would say about that, and we'll talk about that again when we wrap up. But
last point on the debate, though, is look at the last 5 years in D.C. And the Senate used to be the deliberative body, which is it's a root out of debate. They don't debate anymore. And look at the scary ramifications. Your kids, my kids can be drafted now. And we gave the power to over 500 different people to debate the merits of having a war or not, or sending people to die for the sake of our Constitution. And they are not having to debate because they don't know how to debate anymore. And they're stuck in silence. So the greatest issues on taxation, foreign policy, war, foreign commerce, immigration, they're nowhere to be found because they're too chicken to debate. And they think they can just buy the election and this oligarchy can do whatever the heck it wants. It's absolutely constitutionally crazy. And debate should be important because if you can't win a debate now, you're definitely not winning a debate in DC and you're getting run over. And that's exactly what we see.
Okay. We do have a little clarification in the chat. The two Kaisers, Stephen and Alan, are no relation. Alan says he lives in Lincoln. But Stephen has another question that he would like answered. He wants to know your opinion on legalized medical marijuana.
I'm a 10th Amendment guy, so there's no power in the federal government ever given to regulate substances. So states have powers that I don't have, and so it's not even an issue on my radar.
All right.
Yeah, I've got another one. This one's been asked a couple times in the chat. I want to get this one out before we run out of time.
Yeah.
Just real quick here, Todd. Just kind of curious. Is there anything we can do to increase funding on any way, shape, or form for first responders? There's a few people out in the chat kind of curious. Increase funding for fire departments, for police departments. You hear about cash-strapped departments, guys using outdated gear and equipment, not getting the training that they need, not getting the practice that they need. What can be done?
Well, let me correct some of your terminology because I think this is dangerous, progressive think tank stuff that's swept in. First responders, there's no such thing.
Okay.
Who's the first responder to a fire? Who's the first responder if someone breaks into your home?
Yeah.
It's you.
We are. Yeah, we are. Yeah.
So that's actually been terminology developed by progressives to get you to think that the first responder is always a government official.
Okay.
So I call them second responders, and I honor them as much as people that call them first responders. They're really valuable. But let's change that terminology. It's dangerous thinking and how people approach issues.
Okay.
So with that said, no, I mean, it's another, you do not want the federal government into your fire departments, your police departments. What we need to do if they need more resources is we need to draw down federal resources, tax less, and let the states ramp up more. I mean, we should be living in a world where here in Nebraska, it's what, 7% state income tax and let's call it 28% federal income tax. It should be like 7% federal income tax and 28% state income tax. I mean, I'm exaggerating to make a point that our states should have a lot more power than they do and should be driving a lot more of the solutions we need.
Well, you know, and the little bit of funding that comes from the federal level, that seems to be dictating all the rules, policies, and laws. You see that in education all the time. Bulk of our funding comes from the state level property tax, income tax, not income tax, but property taxes in Nebraska. But it's the federal law that dictates what we can do, what we can't do, testing, and they're providing a very small portion of the overall funding.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if the feds take over, if you're a fire department, you need that extra funding, guess what? You better put 12 bathrooms in there to fit every accommodation for every type of person. I mean, my word. I mean, the strings that come with the federal government money, you don't want it. And
I understand.
Thinking, I need to solve B, so therefore I need A. That's not how the federal government works. It's like, no, you need B, so therefore we're going to put on you A, C, D, and E to solve B, and it's wrong. Sorry, that was long-winded.
No, this is good to know. Right. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
That's all right. Okay, Garrett, we've kind of gone around a few other questions. Your turn. What would be next, sir?
No, when you get in, is there any possible way that you could use the correct terminology for firearms and not use this assault rifle crap that's going around? I've had a lot of people talk about that, and it's total BS. We don't own military-style weapons. We don't own assault rifles. I mean, it's a completely misdirecting term.
Yeah. So I started calling them SA-15s, not AR-15s, because most people think that means it's an assault rifle. so joke on that, but I think you speak to a larger issue. I mean, I think as Second Amendment supporters, they're trying to label us as barbarians, like Rambo, and just meatheads. And the reality is, we need to kind of do a PR campaign of, like, look, I have pictures out there where I'm shooting with my kids, and I believe gun instruction is really important, and that kids get the training on how to use these items. And once people have shot a gun and they've gone through the training and supervision, I mean, everyone, you go to a shooting range, everyone is nice as can be, and will go out of their way to teach you the right way to handle things. And we start showing, like, look, the gun guys, we're the nice guys, right? And we care about, these are tools, they're dangerous tools. They need to be taught how to use with a lot of care. But you should be taught because they're valuable tools, and take away the stigma on them. I think most people that are afraid of guns have never fired one and are just scared of them.
Yeah, and the media uses those terms to scare me even further, and I mean, it's just a snowball of garbage, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a first responder to a burglar in your home, which means you're not going to solve the problem yourself with a gun. Go call a first responder. They're the ones trained with the guns, not you. The mentality shift, and that's their latest move.
And, you know, with us legal gun owners wanting to defend our homes with our firearms, as a first responder, a suppressor would really be nice to have so I can save my hearing, okay? Just in the home alone. I mean, you know, a lot of us that have the ARs, we talk about having these, you know, we have our pistol-linked ARs, and we've got our AKs, and we say how we want this stuff for home defense. Well, you know, I've got to buy a $200 license or tax stamp to get my suppressor and save my hearing, you know. So that's another push to get those things taken off the NFA.
Yeah, well, I think that's the other philosophical switch. I think we got to go for bigger instead of incremental, and end up at the incremental. But I mean, we're not winning even the incremental battles because that's what we're starting at. I mean, they go crazy and go for the extremes intentionally to end up at some slow boil, moderated position. Then they'll go for the next position later. So, you know, we got to learn to fight better. That's why
I'm sorry. When it comes to war, do you think we should be going into countries without any congressional approvals?
No, I don't. It's unconstitutional. Unfortunately, many conservatives don't like that position because they've just grown accustomed to war their entire life. But the reality is, we put those heavy decisions into the hands of over 500 people for a reason. And we can't be declaring war without Congress. It's unconstitutional. And people, even gun guys that say, well, I'm okay with that one, I go, then you're not defending your Second Amendment rights because it's unconstitutional.
Yeah, I think we need to start reverting back to the Constitution and stop letting these people just go ahead and do whatever they want. You know, it's getting out of hand. And
as a kid, boys, I don't want to see World War III, and I don't want to see my boys. I'm not going to let my boys be drafted for an unconstitutional war. I know that. It's got to be constitutionally declared. Otherwise, it's unconstitutional, and the military is committed to only obey lawful orders. And what's a lawful order? Well, it's a constitutionally declared war or authorization of force. So the president does have rights for self-defense, but that self-defense, that's been liberally defined now too. And that needs to be, those statutes on those need to be looked at. What is our national defense? I mean, we've got they're defending bars of soap because that's an important industry to, I'm exaggerating, but that needs more narrow scope because we can't be getting into every conflict in the world. We can't afford it.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Garrett.
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay, we want to wrap up here pretty soon. I figured we'd take about an hour. I know that Todd's got a few things he's got to do yet tonight once he's done with the chat here. But I just have one more question here that I want to ask, and I know this could be maybe opening up another can of worms. And let me see if I can get a complicated concept out of my brain, or from my brain out of my mouth as simply as I can here. I know here in the state of Nebraska, we kind of have a patchwork of different gun laws from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and I know that there's currently legislation in the state Senate that has been introduced to try and eliminate that patchwork and just kind of make a uniform set of laws across the state. Now, as far as we've got a few people in the chat. We've got a friend, Travis and I met him recently down in Tulsa at the largest gun show in the world there. And our friend John Z lives in, I believe, Queens, I think it is, Queens, New York. And he's got, of course, horrible, horrible gun laws. He's not even allowed to own an airsoft pistol where he lives. Is there anything that can be done to make the laws uniform across the nation between the states? And second of all, should it be done?
Well, I think we've got to reinforce that the Second Amendment is king, and we need a good interpretation of the Second Amendment, and any other law in violation of the Second Amendment is null and void. So that's most important. If it's constitutional laws, then yeah, I think the big thing with reciprocity is really the right to keep and bear arms. I mean, if you really break it down, so I would say most of these laws are, I would think would be null and void, and that would solve that. But here we are in this modern world, so I think reciprocity laws are good. But I get real leery when the federal government or bigger governments start stepping in and telling smaller governments what to do. And because I think it's even stuff not even related to gun rights. So, I mean, let's take a step back in Nebraska. And I'm a conservative, I believe in local control. Well, our governor's big on fixing property taxes right now at the local level. Well, local taxes are set by local people. And if you got out of control local taxes, it's probably because you got out of control local spending. Now, I'm okay with local governments wanting to take back from the states for unfunded liability pieces. But eventually we got to man and woman up and say, look, you got a local county spending problem. That's what's driving your local taxation problem. And you better start solving these problems at the local level. That's where they're designed to be solved. So I don't know. I always get leery when bigger governments start coming in and trying to solve problems for smaller governments, because ultimately it leads to centralization of power at a higher level, which is kind of my uniform principle of danger. And so, I don't know. You'd have to break it down law by law. That's the unfair part of the question, and you didn't ask it that way. But everyone's thinking of a specific law, and they don't like my answer. So you'd have to break it down to a specific question on how you'd feel about that. But in general, I'm leery of bigger governments telling smaller governments what to do.
I think we can all accept and, at the very least, appreciate where you're coming from there. We've got a few people talking about Nebraska needs to have constitutional carry like some of these other states, and I know that would be more an issue we would take up with our state senators. You are not running for a seat in Lincoln. You're running for a seat in Washington, and you would not, as such, tell the state of Nebraska what to do there. So just like what we just kind of talked about a little bit.
But let me tell you what the state of Nebraska needs to do. Get involved. Here's the sorry state of conservatives. Conservatives want to be right, and they want to agree with you, and they want to prove their point. But guess where the progressives whip our butts? They get involved and unite and get active. We're too busy judging instead of motivating people to the polls. So if there's one thing I want to tell Nebraskans what to do, get others involved in our campaign and get motivated and get to the dang polls. Quit judging everything. We got 2 weeks to go to make a difference. Otherwise, You're going to be left complaining and judging for another 4 years. So let's make a difference this time.
Absolutely, absolutely right, and that's something that Travis can attest to. We discuss at length weekly on these different podcasts that we have across the gun channels .com crew here, and we have a discussion. The word that we throw around a lot is FUD, and what is the definition of a FUD. But regardless of that, and I'm not going to call names here, but I guess to be conservative by nature means you don't want to rock the boat very much. So I can kind of see where some people are coming from. They don't want to make a lot of waves. But again, I find it just infuriating if I get into a discussion with someone and we're discussing, politics, whether it be in Lincoln or in Washington or what have you. And, someone is complaining about the way things are or the way things are unfolding. And I just ask them, and I'll look them straight in the eye and say, well, you did go and vote, right? And they kind of look down and maybe, kick the ground with their toe. Well, no, I really didn't. And you know what? That just, that boils my blood. Stop complaining if you're not going to be part of the solution, because the people that don't go out and vote, to be honest, I feel they're part of the problem, not part of the solution.
Amen. And I call them soft. I mean, this whole not rocking the boat, that's not what our founding fathers did. Our founding fathers pretty much, by signing the Declaration of Independence, said, I'm going to die if we lose the battle. Okay? They risked their fame, their fortune, their honor. And we got people worrying if they're going to be liked by their neighbor or what Joni's going to say, or, oh, I'm afraid a business deal. Are you kidding me? I mean, these people are going to go back and look their legacies in the eye someday and go, I stunk it up. I sat there. I was a wuss. So, I mean, I have no room for apathy. And they're going to get they're going to reap what they sow. That's a universal biblical principle. You do nothing, you're going to reap nothing. You're going to have to make an account someday for your conscience and what you did or did not do with the talents you're given. So I suggest start using them and raise your voice and get involved, or take responsibility for absolute failure. Not that I have an opinion on that.
No, of course not. Of course not.
All right.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. That'll be all the time we have for questions. Real quick here, just closing thoughts or comments. Garrett, what do you have for us?
Well, the most important part of this whole thing is get out there for the primaries. That is where we decide who gets in there and the right person gets in there. Second of all, if we want to change these laws pertaining to our Second Amendment rights, we need to get together and we need to get some activism going, because nobody's going to do it if the people we vote into our state legislatures, they aren't going to do it, unless we talk to them and collectively get our voices together and get it done. So get people together, talk to them, look at these candidates. Vote in your primaries as the most important thing you can possibly do, and then, also follow through with the general election. But, I mean, it all starts right there. And, I see a lot of people, they kind of brush off the primaries and just go along with whoever's in the general election. And that's not where we get the right people. So, I mean, it's very important for everybody to get out there and do that.
Amen.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, my son just came in. He was
Okay.
saying hi. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And here's the good thing, and people know this about me. I'm not here to shove my religion down your throat, but I am to say I am a Christian and proud of it. And the big inspiration for me is Caleb and Joshua. I mean, you do the right thing. You take on the right battle, and sometimes you win the vote, sometimes you lose the vote. But I tell the people, they lost the vote and they saw the promised land. The winners of that vote died in the desert because they said, hey, we're going to sit here and we're afraid of the battle. So, and God's been good to me. I lost in 14. God was great to me. So just do the right thing. Do the tough thing. I mean, come on. You want to sit there? I mean, there's repercussions for that too.
Yeah, sometimes what's popular isn't always what's right, and what's right isn't always what's popular.
Yeah.
Okay, Travis, closing thoughts from you, sir.
No, just thanks for joining us this evening. It's really good to hear that, you know, it's refreshing for once to have somebody that wants to have a place in politics actually answer the questions and not dance around the answers. I'm getting so tired of seeing people get questioned on TV, representatives getting questioned, and people running for office, and they don't ever really seem to answer the questions. They find a good way to skirt around it. I don't think we got that from you this evening. I appreciate the direct answers, and you don't beat around the bush, man. You go right for it, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Don't buy the ads. Don't buy the money. Don't buy the polished prezos. They always end in disaster for the people. So hopefully you get a sense I am a real fundamentally different candidate, and I do love our Nebraska people. And I talk tough, but there's a lot of love for the people there.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, man.
All right. Excellent. And Todd, any other closing thoughts that you want to give?
No, I think we covered a lot of it. No, you got to be different to achieve different. There's just no way about it. If you're going to do the same thing you've always done, that's the definition of insanity. It's going to fail us. You can study the voting record, okay? I don't have one, but a 57% conservative voting record doesn't lie. Fixed NICS doesn't lie. 30% increase in the national debt doesn't lie. 26% increase in spending doesn't lie. Funding jihadists in Syria and Pakistan doesn't lie. I mean, to affirm this type of behavior is just absolutely asinine in my view. And it's time to be leaders again as conservatives, and more importantly, the word constitutionalists. This is what's going to do our country great work. So put your vote out there, get your friends out there. Be proud of what you did at the ballot box again. And that's what's going to make America great.
Excellent. And I've got a few thoughts here before we wrap up. Real quick, Garrett and Todd, I know you're not familiar with doing this all the time. Once we end the broadcast, don't click that hang up button quite yet. And I've got a few things that I'll say once we go off the air there. Now, I've got a lot of people in the chat here that I'm seeing that are saying if they lived in Nebraska, you would definitely have their vote. So, so I think you've done some good as far as getting the message out there. The people from Nebraska who joined us, thank you very much for watching this, and those of you that watch after the fact, I sure appreciate it. And everybody that wants to share this across the state of Nebraska, I know Todd would appreciate that as well. Personally, I don't ever discuss who I vote for, so I am not going to say whether or not I will be voting for you, sir, but I tell you this much, it's been a pleasure, and you definitely have my respect. I do appreciate you being here and answering the questions and being very candid and open with us. That was awesome. A couple things I want to leave everybody with. Like I said, if you are a Nebraskan and you are not registered to vote, correct me if I'm wrong, but the deadline to register is tomorrow, I think. So there is time. You can go online. I will find the link.
Let me clarify. You can switch parties for the primary and switch back later.
If you're not a Republican and you want to go vote for Todd, you can still register Republican. As of tomorrow is the deadline to do that, and you can vote on the Republican ticket and then re-register whatever party you want for the general election. So yes, good point. Good point.
I'm not big on parties. I am one, but I'm not big on them.
Well, you kind of have to pick one, I think, to run. So, so I understand there. I think that if people just would not care about that and care more about what their heart tells them, we'd be a lot further along as a country. So go out and vote. Those of you that are registered, make sure that you do your part as a citizen. Freedom isn't free, and that of course applies to not only the blood that has been spilt to keep this country what it is, but also those of us that aren't serving in the armed forces. You know, we do our part too to make sure that we've got the right people making the laws, enforcing the laws, interpreting the laws of our great land. So I'm going to leave us with one quote, and I know I'm not going to get this perfect, and I can't even tell you who originally said this, but I'm going to paraphrase it. I heard this once, and it said that the only thing necessary for evil to prevail in this world is for good men to do nothing. And so don't do nothing. Get out there, cast your vote. You don't have to vote for who I vote for. We don't have to agree politically, but we do need to do our part. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, all three of you gentlemen, for joining us. I will give a real quick shout out to Patricia Harold, president of the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association. She wanted to be here with us tonight, but she had some family stuff going on and couldn't make it. So Trish, if you watch this later, just know that our thoughts, our prayers are with your family. So with that, thank you very much. Thanks everybody for watching, and please share this video so Todd's answers can get out to as many Nebraskans as possible. Thanks, guys.
Constitution or go to Canada.
There we go.